Welcome to the Early Education Conversation, where we explore the transformative power of early learning through conversations with educators, thought leaders, and members of our community.
So today we are so excited because I get to talk to Makayla Buchanan, Chief of Staff at the Children's Movement. And, Makayla and I have known each other not very long, but I feel as though the amount of conversations and the things we've talked about has amounted to a lifetime of knowing each other. And every time we get together, it's always a whole lot of fun. So, welcome to the Early Learning Coalition's podcast, Makayla.
Thank you, Aruna. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really honored to be a guest on your podcast because I think so highly of you and the work of the Early Learning Coalition. So thanks.
Thank you. So, you have such a rich history of early learning and business and advocacy and all the things. When I think about you and I think about early learning and that three-legged stool, you literally have all legs of the stool, right?
Mm.
And you can speak to all legs of the stool, which is really amazing. So I'll ask you, this is typically how I start the podcast, is what does early learning mean to you?
Gosh, I love the question. And so, I mean, what does early learning mean to me? I think it's all of the experiences that children have in those first 5 years of life. And I mean, some folks will go up to 8, and certainly, we did whenever I worked at the Florida Chamber Foundation. But I would emphasize the first 3 to 5 years, considering that's where most of the brain develops. And we know that children are learning everywhere they are. I have a 4-year-old at home, and whether she's at her formal school location or she's hanging out with mom and dad on the weekend, or she's at the zoo or something. It's, she's taking that in. She's getting the literacy and the numeracy and those things, but she's also getting the problem solving and the sort of adventure and the self-confidence and the things that, are equally important, perhaps if not more in some respects these days. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you're over at the Children's Movement. That's a new move for you, right? So tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Gosh, I'm thrilled to be at the Children's Movement. This I think is week 7 for me. I'm not counting necessarily, but as you enter the podcast and you talking about our relationship, I feel very similarly about the Children's Movement. They
Yeah.
were, and we are, I guess, a great partner with the Florida Chamber and have been for all 15 years, of it being around. The
Mhm.
chamber's work was really sparked by Dave Lawrence, right? Dave Lawrence is our founder, and he went to the business community, went to Mark Wilson and said, look, we're going to need the business community if we're ever going to get early learning seen as the priority that I know you and I believe that it is. And so the Florida Chamber sort of builds the Business Alliance for Early Learning project. And so to come over here into this space, I see it very similarly, but it's also really exciting because I love nonprofit work. And not that the Chamber Foundation wasn't nonprofit work, but it's a very specific type of work.
Yeah.
And so this, I'm really getting to do a lot of strategy, a lot of operations. I'm kind of getting to do the high level and the weedy details, which I love so very much. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps me busy. We've got a great team who are out around the state all the time, which I think is really fun because each of them also have their own perspective and are very rooted in community. So I would say overall, I mean, gosh, the children's movement is really just a dream come true. I would really say to people and believe it is exactly what I wanted to do since really as long as I can remember. I
Yeah.
grew up in a household of educators, and so, but my parents were high school educators. And if people know me, then they're maybe tired of me telling the story, but I grew up in conversations, the Christmas bonfires, and we're Clay County, right? So we do these kinds of things. We're in, I don't know, Palm Beach, but
I was going to say, in South
we
Florida, you're having
right,
a Christmas.
we're doing bonfires, Aruna. We're having get-togethers at the house. We're playing pool upstairs. But all these folks they're educators, they're principals, they're
Mhm.
teachers, they're district level folks, and I continue to hear how not all the time does policy match what happens in classrooms, right? And so we know this. But that really sparked a lot of creativity, I guess, in me. And
Mhm.
so instead of saying and sort of letting that be a period at the end of that sentence, like, oh well, like, well, how could that be different? What could
Yeah.
be solutions? And so to sort of bring that back home to your question, I see the children's movement and then the role that I get the privilege to hold now, working with Madeline and the team, as really being a part of those solution-oriented conversations. We know there's a problem, but we want to connect policy to practice.
Yeah. I mean, working with Madeline has got to be incredible. She's such a rock
Yeah,
star, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, who doesn't know Madeline and who doesn't think that about Madeline?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you talked a little bit about, the business world and how the movement
Mm,
started with Dave Lawrence, who
hmm.
is also foundationally a rock star for early
Yeah,
learning, right?
yeah.
I mean, I think people call him the grandfather of early learning. I think about
That's funny. Yeah.
every podcast I've had so far, someone mentions him. So it
Mm,
just, it speaks to his influence in this
hmm.
space. But,
Hmm.
early learning has been trying to attract and engage with businesses for so long. What do you wish we were actually saying to them that would make a difference?
Thank you for that because I was at a conversation yesterday, which was a fantastic gathering. I mean, there were 60 people in the room, and we had keynotes and business leader. Mark was there. Dr. Herman Knopf from the India Zucker Center at UF was there. And you've got data and you've got stories. You've kind of got this conviction going. And then there's this amazing panel of early learning educators and the Early Learning Coalition. And it's great. But when you look around the room, you notice that one, there really aren't that many business leaders there. And so I ask myself when I go to these gatherings, why aren't they there? And so to get to your question, I think what's missing when we talk to business leaders and when we try to invite business leaders in is that they do want to be a part of solution oriented conversations. It's really important the context of early learning. It is extremely nuanced. We need to be careful with the types of solutions put forward because of the fragile and business model of early
Mhm.
learning centers, right? And family childcare homes. But I do believe that business maybe has come to the table, and what they have heard when they've shown up has been less than solution oriented that they would like, right? They want to know what they can do about this and how they can be helpful. So I wish, I guess, if I could wave my magic wand, that we were giving them some solutions, right? So at their place of employment, there are so many that they can do within their own house and then things that they can do outside of that house. So let's give them the highlights of the data, right? Let's tell them
Right,
the
right.
kids and let's tell them how expensive childcare is and how kids are learning from birth. But then let's quickly get to the fact that they can control within their business family friendly policies, right? And it doesn't have to cost them an arm and a leg. This doesn't have to be oh great, business is taking on another thing to solve problems of the world, but it can be an FSA, right? Like they can have that savings accounts that cost them nothing, and now those families have tax deductible income that they can now help fund that unaffordable quality early learning experience if in fact they are in the workforce and that's what they need for their family. You've got flexible scheduling. This doesn't work, right? Some people will tell you that this doesn't work necessarily for all business types, but being able to drop your child off and pick them up from school, like working with those families to meet
Right,
their needs and
right.
have that flexibility within also doesn't really cost us any money, right? Um,
True.
but when we don't have those flexibilities in place, that's when we can tie in conversations like the lack of productivity, the absenteeism, like the fact that 55% of absences in workplaces are because of childcare issues. Then we can tell them how childcare is the number one reason that Florida families with
Right,
children under six
right.
quit their job, and that those are real people. And as they struggle to find workforce, that this can be a part of their recruitment strategy.
Absolutely.
um, so that's sort of within the house. And I never even talked about more money, right? But if you want to go that route, if you're somebody who says, okay, business, look, I see an opportunity to tell them
Mhm.
that, there are solutions. TriShare has been tried, in states, not Florida, but other states have tried TriShare where you've kind of got, let's think in our state, we have school readiness, right? So money is coming down from the state government, if you will, to early learning coalitions, and it's there to support eligible families. Well,
Right.
maybe you do have some of those eligible families. So that's sort of a portion of money. But maybe there's, other money that the employer can provide. What if it's $50 a week,
Mhm.
$100 a
Mhm.
week?
Mhm.
That could be a stipend for employees.
Yeah.
And does that add up? Yes, I know it adds up. But what is the cost of not doing that? And the answer is $5.4 billion on Florida's economy every single year.
Right.
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 And it's every
Right.
single business. And so I
Yeah.
think if we start framing it, that way, that there are solutions And if we're not going to tackle it as a solution oriented, that here's what we're going to get, the same that we've got right now.
Yeah.
And then that's their own house. And then outside of their house, they can be advocates, right? I mean, we think about who legislators are listening to when they go back home. What types of meetings are they attending? The Economic Development Council, the local chambers, right? They're probably
Absolutely.
doing a state of schools.
Hmm.
Those are the folks that they're going to hear when they go back home and probably are going to be traveling to Tallahassee, during legislative session. Those folks should be given the tools to say early learning matters. Like this is impacting my business and it's impacting my community. And we
Yeah.
have to prioritize this as a state. It cannot just be early learning advocates on their own. It needs to be business too. And so I
Yeah.
think that
I
really should be a
I
huge ask for
totally agree with
business.
that. I totally agree with that. The thing that has come up for me lately is that, when we engage with businesses as a nonprofit, and especially in early learning, the first ask is money, right?
Mm-hmm,
And I wonder
mm-hmm,
from time to time when I'm sitting around that table, whether these business folks are looking at us and saying, why should we foot the bill for something that really should be a public good, right?
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
so many ways to kind of engage them in this conversation about
yeah,
what's the WIFM for you to be engaged in this. I mean,
yeah.
Florida is fast developing. Palm Beach County, I was over at the Hunt Institute about 2 weeks ago, and I had a little spiel that I had a little conversation, and one of the people out of the audience stood up and said to me, hey, you've got all these billionaires there and you've got all of these things. Of course, you can do these things. And the recognition was, yes, we do, but that's not happening in Palm Beach County. And why is that not happening in
Mm-hmm,
Palm Beach County? So
mm-hmm,
it was also
mm-hmm.
a moment for me to say, huh, you know,
Yeah.
how do we engage not because of their money, but because of what they bring forward in terms of moving this forward?
Yeah. And I think a couple of things, and I totally wish I could have been there with you at Hunt. And so excited you got to go. Um, I think bringing them, right, when we kind of, again, going back to the solution part, I think they have to be able to see the vision, right? Like, even if we are going to ask for money, right, what is that money going to do? I think if we use vehicles that folks typically understand as a concept, we might actually go a lot further.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give an example of something that I do think if we're going to ask for money that we might be able to do in local communities, but I also think at a state level, this is something that could be considered. There are other states, right? Florida is not, a tax heavy state. We've got a lot going on in that regard. That's another podcast for another time. But we've seen states like New Mexico, right? And this is coming up now in conversations who have just, first state universal childcare. And this is great for New Mexico. I'm so excited for New Mexico and all the children and families. And, a fully funded birth to five system in Florida would be incredible. I think that's like sort of North Star where
Right.
would we like to go? Because we know that that's going to get children ready for kindergarten. And we know what happens if they're not kindergarten ready. 75% don't catch up, third grade reading scores, so on,
Mhm.
right? So if we have fully funded, but we're not New Mexico. New Mexico, we do not have the oil and gas taxes that New Mexico has that is funding that system. And we do not have a lottery program like Georgia that is funding an early learning system, right? It's funding
Right.
Bright Futures, and that is a really important element too.
Absolutely.
States like Connecticut, much smaller than Florida, sure, but also maybe not as much money as Florida and surpluses in recent years. They
Mhm.
chose to use their state surplus to fund an endowment. And they put $300 million in an endowment in a special vehicle, right, in a fund. And in 2028, they're going to start drawing down above and beyond early learning scholarships for children. And so if we're going to go to businesses and say, hey, we want you to be a part of the solution here. We not only want you to use your voice. Yes, we want you to have family friendly policies and whatever that looks like for your business. Your people, you guys can figure that out. But if you want to go above and beyond, if you're somebody who's really passionate about this and you want to see really transformative change in your community, I think we all do, many of them do, then why not start a local endowment for the children in the birth to five space whose families cannot afford the quality early learning experiences that we want all children to have.
Absolutely.
And this won't be every child, this won't be every family in Palm Beach
Mhm.
County or across the state because there are going to be people with the parent choice concept
Mhm.
who choose to keep their children home. And
Mhm.
that's okay, that's their choice.
Mhm.
But for the families who cannot afford that, which across the state is 69% of all households with children under 6, all the caregivers are in the workforce. I don't know about you, but that means that somebody else is hopefully watching those children. And we want that
Right.
to be a quality early learning environment,
Mhm.
but they can't get there, right? Even if there are slots available, right? Seats for children, they can't afford it many times, right? And then they don't qualify because they might make just too much money. We're talking our ALICE populations, right? Those folks who are working, but their income constrained. It can't quite make the $17,000 a year it costs for
Absolutely.
one infant in Palm Beach County, right? To go to a
Exactly.
center. So a scholarship program. I really think this is such a missed opportunity for communities, for families, that if we started positioning early learning as the education it is, and we started equating it to more like something they understand, which they fund in higher ed, right?
Absolutely.
Scholarships are funded all the time for children to go to college, and it should, right? Because again, we believe in this concept that we want
Right.
to help the next generation, and there's no better place, no better ROI than to help the first 5 years. I just don't think we've been asking for
The right
we've not
things.
maybe the right things. Yeah, the right
Right.
questions.
The right questions, the right things. And I don't think that we have necessarily positioned ourselves either. Right.
Mm,
So one of the things that I'm always talking about is, it sounds like a strange analogy, but I love to shop, right? I love to shop and I go into stores and I'm looking for pretty clothes and I want the prettiest clothes, right? I want to look
right.
really good. But if I didn't prime my pump, right, at the beginning and saved some money, put some money away, the probability is I'm not getting the prettiest, right? I'm just getting what I can afford.
Mm,
And I
hmm
look at early learning the same way, right? We
hmm
don't prime our pump and we don't say, here's what we offer, right? Here's what we know about children. Birth to fives, where 90% of the brain is formed, right? It's where you learn the most and the fastest.
hmm
So we don't prime that moment at birth to five. We are not the ones as early learning experts priming that birth to five rate, right? Age.
Yeah.
Then how do we have an expectation that beyond five, we're going to get the prettiest and the best, right?
Yeah.
And so for
Yeah.
me, that's where I start. And that's where I believe we all should look at.
hmm
If you just let something whittle away for 5 years, it's not going to miraculously bloom.
hmm hmm
You need to
Yeah.
nurture that from day one. And so
Yeah.
when you talk about flipping on its head, right, how we look at the world, that innovative way of looking at the world gives us a different responsibility as well.
hmm Oh
And
yeah.
for early learning, we definitely need to hold that accountability and walk in that accountability so that we can have those conversations.
Oh, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about sort of the how do we expect children if we haven't given, if we haven't given them the best opportunities in this first 5 years that they're going to show up for kindergarten ready. And I say ready, knowing that that definition is more than again just literacy based, right? Like we know what we're measuring, and it's an important measurement that we're doing, so we have at least some data. But there's more to kindergarten readiness than that, right? But nonetheless, so if they come in and they're not, where we would like to see them, well, we're not getting the results that we want, right? I mean, it's insanity. We are doing the same things every single year, right? And then on this end, you're seeing 43% of children entering
Yeah.
Florida schools kindergarten ready. That just want people to sit with that for a second. 43%. You go over to third grade, it's 57% of those children who are reading at a minimally proficient level.
Mhm. Mhm.
And let's skip high school graduation for a second and let's go to the workforce. And you have workforce employers, people trying to hire, saying, guess what? I can't find the people that I want to hire. I can't find them. They don't have the skills that I want. They can't work in a team. They can't prioritize. They don't have any initiative. They're not flexible enough. They don't have communication skills, time management. Like, wow, that's interesting. But not if you're an early learning expert, right? If you're an
Right.
early learning person, you would say, well, actually, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a
Absolutely.
ton of sense because you didn't give the children the tools to
Exactly.
be successful, to
Exactly.
build those skills, and their brain was being wired for those skills when they were learning them in the
Right.
first 5 years, not kindergarten to 12th grade, not in college when they get the fancy binders and they've got the highlighters and they're doing the stuff to
Right.
organize
Right.
themselves. that was the first 5 years and we missed that window of opportunity. And we don't see it for 15 to 20 years, but we do see it. We're seeing it now. We've been complaining about it, right?
Hmm.
And this is the opportunity to your point, right? Like, let's not cast out, sort of like point fingers, right? But
Right.
extreme ownership, right? Of, well, have we
Absolutely.
been telling people that? Have
Right.
we been sharing the fact that,
Right.
hey,
Like
those
screaming it from the
things, those
rooftops, right?
employability skills,
Right.
those are
Yeah.
early learning things. And that's why,
Exactly.
right? That's
Exactly.
going to bring them in.
Yeah, because I think about, we're screaming that we need more money, and we do, right?
Right? Everybody
But
wants more money.
the
My
why is
daughter,
the why is
even,
so important, right?
yeah,
That why behind it's so important.
yeah.
So we've been lucky in Palm Beach. I will say we're lucky. We really embraced that accountability.
Yeah.
Um, and with a combination of strategies, managed to be above
Hmm.
the average state readiness rate
Yep.
coming out of VPK. And there's two readiness rates to keep
Right.
in mind, right?
Right.
Coming out of VPK, we were at the 72%.
Yep.
But we do know as children are entering kindergarten, there's a large subset of children in Palm Beach County who didn't participate in VPK.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
as you get to that readiness, the readiness rate entering kindergarten, you see a sharp drop of 50 something percent, right? I think it's
Hmm.
57% currently. So we know that VPK works because we see the 72%, right? And so
Yeah.
we're grateful for that investment the state has definitely made in early learning.
And I would also add here, not that you're going to toot your own horn, but the phenomenal work that you, Warren, and the whole team have led in Palm Beach
Mhm.
to get those results. Those were intentional and they were systematic and they have worked. And so if there's anybody in Florida wondering how in the world do we get these numbers to go up, I would really encourage you to call Aruna and call the team because it can be done, is the
It can
bottom
be.
line, right? The bottom line is that it can be done.
Thank you for that. I mean, we've worked, that's something that we worked really hard at. And, we were talking about frustrations, right, in this early learning system. And that was one of our frustrations that led us to that space where we were like, that's it, right? We're not going to continue to do the same thing over and over. We're going to kind of jump off the page and do something no one's done. And we're like, one of two things can happen. We can fail and fail spectacularly and hopefully learn from it, or
Yeah.
we're actually going to do some good. Lucky for us, it was some good. And we've lived to tell that story. So let's flip a little bit for early learning. You're a mom. Tell me about that.
Mm.
Tell me about that.
Oh my gosh, it is it's the greatest privilege of my life, to be a mom. And I was laughing because my daughter, she is 4 now, and to see her grow and all of the things be true that adults in my life and family members said about being a parent and being a mom and uh are all true, right? They're all true, right? And shockingly, those folks were really quite wise. And so their advice was good and the things they said. But it's incredible. I mean, just to see the joy, the genuine curiosity. She wants to know why the fog's in the trees, right? Like, why are the clouds down here, Mom? She's it's Spirit Day at school today, so she wants to wear the green and yellow cheerleading uniform. So it's like, okay, let's get that done, right? You're feeling like, oh man, this is a whirlwind. This is all going by way too fast. But honestly, it's just we're so lucky to have Nora to be her mom, and it's fun. It's just fun, every
Yeah.
single day is really just a new adventure for her, and it seems a little cliche, but it really is just kind of the greatest thing that I get to do every single
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, and so as we're talking about being a mom and having a child, one of the things I know that the movement has done really well is a project around called Bosses for Babies.
Oh
So tell
yeah,
us
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so thank you. So Bosses for Babies, it's really an initiative that was born out of this idea, kind of like we were talking about earlier, that really every business can do something to support their workforce who might be parents or caregivers, right? And so it's really looking to recruit employers who are actively got policies or practices in place, anything from flexibility, or maybe you have a lactation room, all the way to maybe some of those more of those formal options, where you do have a stipend or you have on-site childcare. Maybe you partner something, with like a YMCA down the road, so you to hold some slots for near site. So really looking for employers who are leaders in the space, who are sort of, taking this on as something that they want to do, because again, they know that they want Florida to be the family friendliest state in the nation, because it's going to help their business and it's going to help their communities. But also that they are advocates for early learning, right? Again, going back to that. So, you've got the employers who are doing something in their space, but they're also typically advocates. They're the folks, leveraging their voice for an op-ed or to talk to legislators. And maybe, right, like, your PNCs of the world, they're investing pretty heavily in their local communities as well. So they're supporting early learning centers. They're reading at VPK, classrooms, not just, second or third grade classrooms, right? So I think, Bosses for Babies is a statewide initiative. There are, I think, over 114 of them now all across the state, from small
Wow.
businesses, yeah, all the way to sort of your corporate, but and all over. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's exciting. We get more and more every single week. Rick on our team is the one who is really going out and trying to recruit
Yeah.
folks in, but it's been very successful. And I would say that we're really just trying to recognize those leaders who are already doing something and inspire and hopefully motivate other people to follow in their footsteps. And again, kind of like your solution in ELC, I would say it can be done, right? We have
Yeah.
manufacturing businesses, you've got restaurants, you have banks, I mean, anything you could think of where, oh, that could never work. I've got this thing, this type of shift work, whatever. It has been done. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we've got case studies and tons of data about what's working in Florida, in our business community. So that's a little bit about Bosses for Babies.
Yeah.
And
I love the whole aspect of, not one shoe fits all kind of a thing, that you
mhm,
can really craft it based on where you are at the moment and what
yeah,
you can handle at the moment. Any small bit helps
yeah.
families. So I like that. The other thing that I saw that you guys did recently that I participated in by viewing is your legislative thing that you're doing, where you're
Oh,
talking about
yeah.
all of that. That's really fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Because I think, raising awareness in communities and getting, being on shows like this and talking about how important early
Hmm.
learning is, and the narrative and the messaging is really important, right? So
Yeah.
important to do. It is also really important that we have the right policies and investments in place in the state of Florida, right? And so if we really want to transform the early learning system, we need to be engaging with legislators.
Hmm.
They are champions in the space. We've recently had Senator Claudiute on. We had Representative Bartleman, who carried some legislation last year that really moved Florida's early learning system forward. Aruna very well, the changes for the entrance threshold for Florida's child care tuition assistance program. We call it, school readiness. So that was really good, really important to get that entrance definition changed. There's still more work to be done. I know there are a number of folks in the House and the Senate, some who, see that opportunity to increase that entrance threshold, because so many families in Florida are just making too much to qualify. And what we don't want is folks to go into poverty on their path to self-sufficiency in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the legislative engagement could not be more important. I think it's at the heart of the movement that we're doing, and really encouraging folks, no matter where they are in the state or no matter what role they hold, right? You mentioned the three-legged stool, whether they're an advocate or a business leader or a community leader, what have you, educator, that they are communicating, that they are actively engaging their legislative delegation, constantly, not just during session, but over the summer, having those meetings in district offices, doing the committee weeks. And so you saw the debriefing webinar and just sort of recapping, saying this
Yeah.
is great, but where are we going to go from
Well,
here?
the thing I really like about it is the accessibility of bringing legislative, action and intent forward.
Hmm.
When you think about it, the local person maybe votes for a local thing, but doesn't get to see the full picture of how this impacts your world, really. You may be thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, I'm voting for this one thing and I'm only doing this one thing, but that one thing could have a ripple effect for so many things. And so the
Hmm.
opportunity to hear about all of the legislative pieces either coming up or that's passed and how you can engage in future,
Yeah.
action for that. I think it's really tremendous. And I love that it's open to anybody. And
Oh yeah.
there's not a lot of, I'm going to hold this from you and I'm going to,
No,
it's
yeah.
yours, right?
I think the system, and I actually don't really like the word system because it
Mm.
feels less than what early learning really is, for me, and I think also for the movement. But um, everybody belongs in this conversation,
Yeah.
right? Whether you are currently a parent, whether you're an educator or the business, like everybody belongs here. And we are not going to do children and families any more justice by doing the same things, by listening to the same people. Great people. We've got amazing folks who are experts in the field, no doubt, right? Absolutely. But we have to start getting more and more folks into the space and bringing forth that innovative solution that maybe we just haven't thought of yet, right? There is some brilliance in what's happening on the ground, and
Mhm.
so yeah,
Mhm.
I love that about the movement. I think it's one of the greatest parts of what we do. We often will
Yeah.
say that the movement, the real movement, happens in your local communities from the Panhandle to the Keys, right?
I love
So
that.
you've got the children's movement. We're statewide. Yes, we're headquartered in Miami, but there's people all over. But the real movement is with you, right? It's with real people in communities. Not that we're fake people, but you know what I mean. Like it's with the folks on the ground every
Right.
day dealing with um, early learning issues, children at large. And so we need everybody. And I do truly believe that
Absolutely.
we've, not to get super down a rabbit hole here or take us off, but I think when you look historically at successful movements, right?
Mhm.
Just and whether you politically agree with them or not,
Mhm.
um, we can agree, I think, that the successful ones had a mass of people involved, right? It was a coordinated effort across a huge group of people who
Right.
came with maybe not pitchforks, but they came out in numbers and they came,
Yeah.
with very concrete asks and demands for things to
Mhm.
change. And we will not get further with early learning until we have that level of mobilization from people from all walks of life and from all three legs of
Absolutely.
that stool. So yeah, I love it
Yeah.
too.
I mean, that's what a great, I love that look of the movement, right? And what it's about and engaging everyone in moving something forward, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's really exciting. So what's next for you? Like what's happening? What's next? What's new in your world?
Gosh, there's so much new, given the fact that I'm still feel like I'm learning my job. Shh, cut that out. Don't tell Natalie. Not really. But I mean, it's an exciting time because clearly we have legislative committee weeks going on. And so we know that there will be some bills that we'll be tracking, obviously, then and through session. We've had some amazing conversations with what we call our advisory board. We've got, work groups for some of our community engagement work that we've been doing for a number of years based off of Florida's early learning roadmap, which really took, like we are talking about, it's 1,000 people who came, right? Parents
Yeah.
and educators. And they said, okay, what's Florida going to look like in the future? What should it look like? And we put the roadmap together, not as the movement, but as this collective of individuals who said, here it is, here's this path. And so we've sort of just been, walking down that path, right? Like, okay, like
Yeah.
here's the next thing, here's the next thing, here's the next thing. And in one of our work groups most recently, we really talked about the need for, this more collective, unified effort at a local level. And so I think you'll probably hear some more about that coming out, in the months to come. We'll see how that unveils. But
Nice.
that is a huge opportunity and priority here, outside of just legislative session and the work that we're doing there. We've got Bosses for Babies rolling. Rocio on our team does advocacy training, so we'll be hitting the road doing those. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of what's next. And I think the only thing I would say is we've also really leaned into, if you kind of think about what's going to drive some of that unified messaging, what's going to get people to change their narrative.
Sure.
We've got a couple of research projects in the works that hopefully will be done before session gets kicked off in January,
Mhm.
that we do hope will help advocates and business leaders alike really go in, with some key phrases and thoughts
That's
about why
exciting.
early learning is important.
Yeah, that's exciting. So people don't know this about me, but I fangirl, with lots of people. Makayla is definitely someone I fangirl with. And the reason why is because every time we talk, right, you have big ideas and big dreams, but they don't stay big ideas and big dreams. You map it out, you roadmap yourself into solutions. And I love that. Not many people in early learning do that, right?
Mm.
And a lot of times we're pontificating about this utopia world that we're looking for, but we're not road mapping and we're not moving there. But one of the things I love about you is we talk 2 weeks ago about something, and this week I call you and you're like, guess what? We're moving. We're doing this. We're getting there. And I'm always like, how does she move so fast, right?
Uh,
That's one thing. And the other thing that I fangirl about is your insatiable ability to hold on to data in that brain of yours and just use it at the click of your fingers.
I
And I love
so
that.
funny.
I
Thank
love
you.
that.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really, that's really nice of you to say. I just I can't help myself from thinking that as a young girl, I'm the older sister. My parents were very young when they had me, but I kind of grew up with my parents in many ways.
Mhm.
My dad was very, very young. He always coached football, and when I say young, I mean they were seniors in high school when they had me, and they
Right.
had my sister by the
Wow.
time they were 22. And so really you can think about an 18-year-old with a child and what I want, sort of his legit development, right? It's even till the time he was 30 and now, so anyway, so as a football coach, I watch him, right? Like, and he'd be able to just like pull the exact play and the exact number of the child, the kid that they had played against 4 years ago. And this was the play they ran. And this is the defense I put in. And this is the drill we did to do that. And I was like, what is he on? It's like, what has he got going on up there? That's crazy. And so maybe it's just genetics a little bit, Aruna, but so I can't totally take credit for all of it, but I do appreciate you. And it just made me laugh because it
From the
is true.
football field to
Yeah.
early learning,
Yeah,
Makayla's
man.
development track.
I don't know. But I think data is important. And I think, you lose people when we sit there and we just talk about a
Yeah,
problem forever.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't talk about a problem forever and expect anybody to stay following you very long, right?
yeah.
I
That's
mean, if
true
you
for
want,
everything in life, right?
everything in life.
Yeah,
So early learning is no different. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, you guys have had an ability to hear a little bit, just a snippet of who Makayla Buchanan is, and I'm sure that many of you know her already. But if you want to hear more about her, come to our
Hmm.
Love to Learn event
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
on December 4th
That's right. Yeah.
from 8 to 11. Makayla will be on a panel talking more about the business world and advocacy. We are going to be thrilled to hear all the things that you are going to put forward there. As you know, Isabel Howe will be there with her book, Love to Learn.
Yeah.
It's going to be exciting. I am really looking forward to this because there's some great people on that panel.
Yeah, I'm stoked about it. I know you've been working hard on getting this together for a while, and so
Yeah.
just excited to see it come to fruition and be with you all in December. So yeah, come join us. Come check out what Aruna's got going on, and I'll do my best to share all things the children's movement and great things that business leaders can do in the
You
space.
are a
So
rock star. You are
thanks,
a
Aruna.
rock star.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much for spending some time with us today. And I know we'll be talking in like forever.
Oh, forever.
So,
Yes, yes.
forever. Thanks
Thanks,
so much.
Aruna. Take care.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.